So tonight, I really want to talk about fear. Fear's been like a subject that really God's put on my heart over the last year, just to really be speaking about to myself and my own struggles with fear. And as I was preparing this message during this last year in fear, my wife heard what I was preparing, and she said, "I don't think it's a good idea for you to speak on fear." And I'm like, "Why not?" And she said, "Well," and this is her word, she said, "Well, you're not scared of anything, so no one's gonna listen to you." And I'll be honest, like, that stroked my ego a little bit, that my wife would think I'm not scared of anything. It made me a little proud. But the truth is, and I think she should know and all you should know, that couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, the reason I want to speak on fear is because it has been a lifelong struggle for me, from childhood to the things I do to this day. To this last year, 10 trips to Ukraine. A year before that, being in Afghanistan, doing the rescue operations in Afghanistan, 8 deployments to Afghanistan. I've always dealt with fear on some level, and I think all of us as men do on a daily basis. Anybody else? Am I alone? Does anybody else struggle with fear? Well, we all are going to deal with fear. The truth is, in life, if we're going to be the men that God created us to be, then we're going to have to go toe-to-toe with fear. And the Bible has a lot to say about fear. I want to start off in Joshua 1:9, where the Bible says, "Have I not commanded you to be strong and courageous? Do not be frightened and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." We're going to go through a lot of stuff, a lot of things the Bible and God's word has to say about fear. But I want to start off with a story about my time in Afghanistan and share a little bit, catch you guys a little bit up on some of the things I've been involved with Afghanistan. My job in the military was a little bit different. I was in special operations. I did 14 years in the special operations community. I was a Force Recon Marine, and I had a very unique opportunity after 9/11 to try out for what's called a JSOC task force, a Joint Special Operations Command task force. And I went represent the Marine Corps at one of our premier special operations units. I think the most premier unit in the world. And it was a great privilege to go there. My job there was a little bit different than most people picture in the military. So if I could describe it to you a little bit, I was called the AFO, Advanced Force Operator. And what that job is kind of, for those who hadn't been in that arena, what that job is, it's really like being an undercover cop in the military. You live and work with the local nationals. You do what's called singleton operations. So you work by yourself or maybe with one other teammate if you're lucky, and you embed with the locals, and you go ahead of your unit to build all the clandestine infrastructure so you can put your assaulters on target to capture or kill bad guys in non-permissive areas that military's not traditionally gonna go. And so that was my job. I lived and worked with the local nationals, and during that time living and working with them, there was one guy in particular that was originally assigned to me as my interpreter and ultimately became my teammate and more so became my friend. His name was Aziz. A lot of people who served in the military might have had an interpreter. You have an interpreter for your whole unit, and then you go in a deployment, and if you go in a new deployment, you'll get a whole different interpreter and never see the person again. That was much different for me and Aziz. I had Aziz, that was my interpreter. The two of us worked together as a two-man team, and for continuity purposes, we did that for all 8 deployments. So we spent a lot of time together. I always say, like, if you ever go on a long car ride with someone, you're in the car with someone for like 8 hours. At the end of that 8-hour car ride, you're either gonna love that person or you're gonna hate them. Me and Aziz spent a lot of long car rides. We'd go into the mountains of Afghanistan or across the border in Pakistan, and we'd spend weeks, months together, just the two of us. We've been on hundreds of missions to do the clandestine infrastructure, to put our soldiers on target, to capture, kill whoever was on the top 10 list of the Taliban at that time. And that's what we did. And I could tell you, he saved my life on 3 specific occasions, but he probably saved my life every day. Like, don't walk there, don't eat that. If you talk to that person, they're gonna kill us. Like, if somebody hears you talking, they're gonna kill us. Like, and he was always looking out for me. There was never a time that I walked around a corner or walked in a cave that he let me go first. Even though I had more military experience than him, he always felt it was his responsibility to take care of me. And he's one of the most selfless people that I know, one of the most patriotic and freedom-loving people I know. And he understood freedom and democracy, even though he had never seen it before, which was always crazy to me. And we in America, we live in this environment where we're blessed to be in this bubble of freedom and democracy, and most of us don't even understand it or value it or appreciate it. This is a guy that never even seen it before and was willing to trade his life for it, for his daughters that he wouldn't even have yet, that his daughters could grow up and not be sexually enslaved, so his sons could grow up and have the choice of what they want to do for a living and not be forced to be Taliban. And he was willing to die for that. And it was very much a privilege in my life to serve alongside people like Aziz. I said he saved my life probably every day, but I want to tell you what one time specifically he saved my life. We were in a place called Brotherhood, Afghanistan, which at that time, the Taliban had pretty much controlled that area. And you might imagine, like, be picturing desert where I was at in Afghanistan. Imagine Colorado, big mountains. Colorado would probably look like foothills to some of these mountains. Giant mountains, pine trees. It was in the winter, so it was very cold. Probably like right at 0 degrees Fahrenheit and wind blowing. So me and Aziz are there a few weeks before our assaulters to catch this guy that was like number 6 on the Taliban list. And as we were there, our unit's way away. It's just the two of us. We were driving in a pickup truck, and we parked the truck in the woods, and we were walking across this open field. Brotherhood's a farming town, so it was this open field that nothing was growing in because it's the middle of the winter. It was very muddy, and which I remember being kind of irritated walking through this muddy field, but ended up saving me later because people couldn't drive through that field to chase us. So we were walking through this field, and at the end of this field, there was this old man, there was a farmer, and he comes up to us and gets our attention and starts talking to Aziz to let him know that the Taliban was in this area, and they were looking for a foreigner, which was me. And so Aziz turns around, he's like, hey, we have to go. And so we start walking back across this field to our truck, and as we're walking, we catch out of peripheral vision 3 Hilux pickup trucks driving by, black flags on them, Taliban flags, the bad guys. It's just the two of us. They're like 100 yards behind us. We're trying not to make eye contact, and as they pass by, we hear they hit the brakes and go in reverse. They're coming to see who we are. And about 20 or 30 guys get out of the vehicles, and they start yelling at us. And they were yelling in Pashtun, which I spoke Dari a little bit, and I couldn't make out what they were saying, but when I heard the words Bosh, I knew exactly what they were saying, which means stop. And probably the only thing that stopped at the time was my heart. I didn't want to look back because I thought in my mind, we're 2 people out in the middle of a field. They're not going to come out here and get us because they couldn't drive out there because it's muddy field, which is one of the things that saved us. And they're probably not going to just shoot us, not knowing who they were. And so that's what I was banking on. As we're walking, I heard, I don't know what I heard first. I either heard the round crack over our head, get that pop that over your head. If anybody's been on the receiving end of gunfire, you hear that the air like crack over your head, or I heard the gun go off. I don't know what I heard first, but in that moment I knew immediately, like, if I run, they're gonna kill us. If we stop and give up, they're gonna capture us and probably kill us. The only option at that moment was to fight. Aziz and I was talking the whole time, so we knew exactly what we were gonna do. And when that round went off, I just turned with the rifle, and as I turned, the first person I saw was a guy standing next to a red Hilux pickup truck. He's standing next to the passenger door, and he had an assault rifle pointed at me. And so I came up and I fired 2 shots, right center mass, right towards his chest, and the first 2 shots hit. I thought I missed him because I seen the windows bust out behind him, but I think it was from him going back. Maybe his head hit the window. And when he fell down, like, I knew he was dead because when he fell down, he just kind of went limp and he didn't fight back. And I was expecting to be in an all-out gunfight because I just turned and shot, just 2 of us. I just turned and shot at a group of 30 Taliban fighters. I'm thinking we're going to, here comes the gunfire. But actually, I think we surprised them. They actually ran behind the vehicles. I don't think they thought we were going to fight back. And right when they ran behind the vehicles, I yelled at Aziz to move, and we did what's called Australian peel. Some of you guys may have been in the military and know what bounding techniques is, but we did Australian peel lateral movement. So basically what happened was, as I told Aziz to move, I emptied my magazine while Aziz is moving. Aziz sets in place, starts emptying his magazine, and I move. This is bounding, how you get out of open danger areas, which we're in at that moment. And so as we're doing that, about the 3rd iteration, and gunfire's going everywhere, which I think was miraculous because we were only 100 yards away. And I never even, not only did we not get hit, but I never even seen a bullet hit the ground. And I've been at other gunfights and you see dirt flying up and not even a bullet hit around us. I believe God was just protecting us in that moment. But as we were bounding away in the middle of the iteration, I was covering Aziz, and Aziz stopped in the middle of a movement. Now, if you stop in the middle of a movement like that, you're exposing yourself because you're supposed to be the one being covered at the time. So I'm trying to draw fire to me. he stops and puts himself in harm's way. And the reason he stopped was he saw something I didn't. He saw a Taliban fighter stand up with an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade launcher, and he knew that because I was laying a base of fire, I'd be drawing that fire to me, and that guy would fire that rocket at me. He stopped, exposed himself, and shot that Taliban fighter and dropped him where he stood and saved my life, probably both of our life that day. When that happened, I just yelled, run. We ran, got to our vehicle, and because of that mud, they couldn't come to get us. We came out the other side of those woods and went back to our safe house. We reported the incident, and our command said, do you guys think you were compromised, or do you think this was chance contact, meaning we just ran into the Taliban and they wanted to know who it was? And it was Aziz that said, no, they don't know who we are. We need to finish this mission, and chose to stay there. And about 10 days later, our command came there. They didn't capture the bad guy. They killed him and took one of the worst bad guys on the battlefield out because of Aziz's courage. Aziz was just recognized. We nominated him to be recognized before U.S. Congress. He's the first Afghan to be recognized for U.S. Congress on an operation that he and I did, where he came up with a hasty plan to save 4 Navy SEALs that were trapped in a Taliban village in 2005. And, he's an amazing human being. And when Aziz and I wasn't in those mountains doing our operations, I didn't go back to base, and he went back to his home. I actually went to his home. The first warm meal we got when we came out of those mountains was at his wife Hatra. She made our first warm meal. And when you're out in the mountains frozen for like a month straight, man, that first warm meal is so good. And I could still taste that palau that she made, that big bowl of palau of rice. And, she was an amazing woman. I got a chance to get to know her. And when his son, Mashoud, was born, I held his son as a baby. Mashoud, his oldest daughter, was born. I held her as a baby. What I'm trying to communicate to you is this wasn't somebody I worked with. These were family to me. And so the years went by. I left Afghanistan after my 8 deployments. I dealt with those who heard my story last time, anxiety, depression, debilitating panic attacks after burying 15 friends. Aziz and I lost a lot of those friends together. Aziz was compromised for our operation. I ended up being abducted by ISI, which is the Foreign Intelligence Agency in Pakistan. Our house, Aziz and I's house, was blown up. We had a lot of bad things happen, and we both ended our deployments by both of us going down dark paths simultaneously. I found redemption through all that, through a relationship with Christ in 2010. And I began a life of sharing that with others through a foundation we founded called Mighty Oaks Foundation. We cannot let our fear keep us from doing the things that we need to do as men, especially as men of God. And I'm not always talking about physical fear. There's lots of things that we could be scared of. The truth is, in my life and your life, there's times that we're gonna face fear and be terrified to do things that we have to do as men. In life, no matter who you are, no matter how tough you are, no matter how much training you have to do something, you're gonna face fear. The question in life isn't if you're gonna face it, but when you do, how are you gonna respond to it? Right? Do you get steady your trembling knees and move forward, or will you allow fear to win? Will you allow it to paralyze you and keep you from your goals, your dreams, your maximum potential, and ultimately keep you from doing the things that God put you on this earth to do? There's an author named Shay Richardson who says this: courage is not living without fear. Courage is being scared to death, but doing the right thing anyway. Or the great theologian John Wayne said it like this: courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway.